Your Nissan needs help. You do not have the budget to take it to the shop. There are reset tricks that mechanics use every day on your Nissan that you are not aware of. They do not even tell you about them. You only get a quote of $350 for a simple reset procedure. The service advisor says it requires specialized diagnostic equipment and factory-level access. But here is what they are not telling you. Most Nissan reset procedures can be performed right in your driveway using nothing more than your ignition key and gas pedal. No scan tools, no laptop computers, no secret codes. Just a specific sequence of steps that Nissan technicians have known about for decades, but rarely share with customers. The most valuable reset procedure that Nissan mechanics keep quiet about involves the continuously variable transmission position sensor learning. This reset alone has saved Nissan owners tens of thousands of dollars in unnecessary transmission replacements. Nissan CVT transmissions, particularly in models from 2005 through 2015, are notorious for developing harsh shifting, shuddering during acceleration, and delayed engagement. When these symptoms appear, most dealerships immediately diagnose it as a failing transmission and quote anywhere from $4,000 to $7,000 for a replacement. But in many cases, the transmission itself is perfectly fine. The problem lies with the transmission control module losing its learned values for the position sensors. Over time, as components wear slightly and temperatures fluctuate, the transmission control module needs to relearn the exact position values for optimal operation. When these values drift too far from the stored reference points, you get symptoms that feel exactly like a dying transmission. The reset procedure forces the control module to relearn these values from scratch, and in about 70% of cases, the transmission symptoms disappear completely. The reason this reset is so valuable yet so hidden is purely financial. Think about it from the dealership perspective. If a customer comes in complaining about transmission shudder, the service department can either spend 5 minutes performing a free reset procedure or sell a $4,000 transmission replacement. Which option generates more revenue? Some dealerships will perform the reset first, but many skip straight to recommending a new transmission, especially if the vehicle is older or out of warranty. I have talked to former Nissan technicians who admitted they were explicitly instructed by service managers not to mention reset procedures to customers unless absolutely necessary. The justification was that reset procedures do not generate billable hours, while diagnostic testing and parts replacement do. One technician told me about a service advisor who would routinely list reset procedures as throttle body cleaning or transmission service on customer invoices, charging $80 to $120 for a procedure that took 3 minutes and cost nothing in parts. Steering angle sensor reset is another procedure that Nissan dealerships regularly charge for, but rarely explain. This reset becomes necessary anytime you disconnect the battery, replace the steering rack, perform a wheel alignment, or even just replace the clock spring behind your steering wheel. When the steering angle sensor loses its calibration, your traction control and vehicle dynamic control systems cannot function properly. You will see warning lights on your dashboard. Your vehicle stability control might activate unexpectedly during normal turns, and in some cases the steering wheel will sit noticeably off-center, even though the wheels are pointing straight ahead. Dealerships know that these symptoms make drivers nervous, so they are happy to charge anywhere from $120 to $250 for a steering angle sensor reset and calibration. What they do not tell you is that the entire procedure can be performed in about 90 seconds using only your steering wheel and ignition key. No diagnostic equipment required, no special training needed, just a specific sequence that forces the control module to recognize the current steering wheel position as the new 0 point. The throttle body relearn procedure is perhaps the most commonly needed relearn on Nissan vehicles. Yet it is also one of the most frequently misdiagnosed issues. When the throttle position sensor loses its learned values, you will experience symptoms that seem serious and expensive. Rough idle, stalling at stoplights, hesitation during acceleration, poor fuel economy, and sometimes even a check engine light. Take your Nissan to a dealership with these symptoms, and they will likely recommend throttle body cleaning service for $120 to $180. Or, in more aggressive cases, they might suggest replacing the entire throttle body assembly for $500 to $700. The dirty secret is that in most cases, the throttle body is not actually dirty and does not need to be replaced. The electronic control unit has simply lost its stored reference values for the throttle position sensor. This happens naturally over time, especially if you frequently drive and stop and go traffic or make lots of short trips where the engine never fully reaches operating temperature. It also happens immediately anytime you disconnect the battery or replace the throttle body. The reset procedure takes less than 2 minutes and costs nothing, but it can completely eliminate symptoms that would otherwise lead to hundreds of dollars in unnecessary repairs. Electronic control unit resets for various systems represent another category of free fixes that mechanics prefer to keep. Mysterious and complicated. Your Nissan contains multiple control modules that govern different vehicle systems. For example, the engine control module, the transmission control module, the body control module, the anti-lock brake system module, and others. These modules store learned values, adaptation parameters, and long-term fuel trims that help them optimize performance for your specific driving conditions. But sometimes these learned values become corrupted, drift too far from ideal parameters, or simply accumulate errors over thousands of miles of driving. When this happens, you might experience all sorts of strange symptoms that seem unrelated. Poor fuel economy, rough idle, transmission shifting issues, intermittent warning lights, or systems that just do not work as smoothly as they used to. Many Nissan owners describe their vehicle as just not feeling right anymore, even though they cannot pinpoint exactly what is wrong. Dealerships love these vague symptoms because they justify extensive diagnostic testing, multiple billable hours, and often parts replacement based on educated guesses rather than definitive diagnosis. But in many cases, simply resetting the affected control modules back to their default values and allowing them to relearn from scratch will solve the problem completely. It is like rebooting your computer when it starts acting glitchy. Sometimes you do not need to replace hardware. You just need to clear out the accumulated errors and start fresh. If you appreciate the value provided, consider subscribing. The air-fuel ratio learning reset is particularly important for Nissan vehicles with high mileage or for vehicles that have recently had fuel system work performed. Your engine control module constantly monitors the air-fuel ratio through oxygen sensors and adjusts fuel injection timing and duration to maintain optimal combustion. Over time, the control module builds up a long-term fuel trim table that compensates for things like fuel injector wear, minor vacuum leaks, carbon buildup, and sensor drift. This is normally a useful adaptation because it allows the engine to maintain good performance even as components age. But sometimes the long-term fuel trims can adapt to temporary conditions or accumulate so many compensations that they start causing problems. For example, if you had a vacuum leak that went unrepaired for several months, the engine control module would gradually increase fuel delivery to compensate for the extra air entering the engine. If you then fix the vacuum leak, the control module is still commanding excessive fuel, which results in poor fuel economy, rough idle, and possibly even a check engine light for running too rich. The solution is to reset the long-term fuel trims, which forces the control module to start learning from scratch based on the current actual condition of your engine. Dealerships sometimes charge $150 to $200 for this procedure, calling it fuel system adaptation or fuel trim relearn. However, this is a free procedure you can perform yourself. The idle air volume learning procedure is crucial after any work that affects engine breathing. This includes replacing the throttle body, cleaning the throttle body, replacing the idle air control valve, or replacing the air filter with a different brand that flows slightly more air. Your engine control module needs to know exactly how much air is flowing through the engine at idle under various conditions, such as when the engine is cold, when the air conditioning is running, when electrical loads are high, and when the engine is at full operating temperature. If the stored idle air volume values do not match the actual current airflow, you will get hunting idle, where the engine speed surges up and down. You can stall when you come to a stop, or the idle will be too high or too low. Many Nissan owners have paid for throttle body replacements or idle air control valve replacements trying to fix these symptoms, when all that was needed was a simple reset procedure to let the control module relearn the correct idle air volume values. This procedure typically takes about 5 minutes of idle time, while the control module samples airflow under different conditions and updates its learned values. Battery management system resets become necessary whenever you replace your battery or disconnect it for any significant period of time. Modern Nissans have sophisticated battery management systems that monitor battery health, adjust charging voltage based on temperature and battery condition, and regulate alternator output to optimize fuel economy. When you install a new battery, the battery management system still thinks it is managing the old battery with its age capacity and specific charge characteristics. This can result in overcharging a new battery, which shortens its lifespan, or undercharging it, which leaves you at risk of not starting. The battery management system needs to be reset so it knows it is working with a fresh battery. Dealerships often perform this reset when they sell you a new battery, but they charge for it as part of the battery installation service. If you replace your own battery or buy one from an auto parts store, you need to perform this reset yourself, or your new battery might not last as long as it should. The radio and infotainment system reset is less critical mechanically, but still valuable when you experience glitches, frozen screens, or features that stop working properly. Nissan infotainment systems, particularly the older generation units from 2010 through 2016, are notorious for developing software bugs and strange behavior. The screen might freeze on startup, the backup camera might stop displaying, Bluetooth might refuse to connect, or the navigation system might stop accepting destination inputs. Dealerships will often suggest reflashing the software, or even replacing the head unit, which can cost anywhere from $200 to $1,500 depending on the system. But in most cases, a hard reset of the infotainment system will clear the glitch and restore normal operation. This is essentially forcing the system to power down completely, clear its temporary memory, and restart from scratch. It is like pulling the battery on your smartphone when it freezes. Window auto up and auto down functionality can stop working after you disconnect the battery or replace window regulators. Nissan power windows allow you to fully open or close a window with a single tap of the switch. That convenience requires the window control module to know the exact travel limits of each window. If you disconnect the battery or replace a window regulator, the control module loses those learned limits and disables the auto function as a safety precaution. You can still move the window, but you must hold the switch the entire time, which is annoying. Dealerships sometimes charge $60 to $100 to relearn window positions, calling it window initialization or window calibration. But it is a simple procedure you can perform in about 30 seconds per window. Tire pressure monitoring system resets are frequently needed, but often mishandled. Your Nissan continuously monitors tire pressure through sensors mounted inside each wheel. When you rotate your tires, change to winter tires, replace a tire, or even just adjust tire pressures, the system needs to be reset so it knows the current position and baseline pressure of each sensor. If you do not perform this reset, you might get persistent warning lights, even though your tire pressures are correct, or the system might display incorrect information about which tire is low. Some tire shops charge $20 to $40 for this reset, and dealerships might bundle it into a more expensive service. The reset procedure is free, and it takes about 30 seconds if you know the correct sequence. Service reminder. Lights and maintenance required indicators are designed to prompt you to bring your vehicle in for scheduled maintenance. Once you have performed the required service, these lights need to be reset, or they will continue nagging you. Dealerships always reset these lights as part of their service, but if you perform your own oil changes and maintenance, you need to know how to reset them yourself. Some service advisors will suggest that only dealership technicians can reset these lights because they require special equipment. This is not true. Every Nissan owner can reset service lights using only the instrument cluster buttons and the ignition key. The procedure varies slightly by model year and by which indicator light you need to reset, but none of them require diagnostic tools or dealer-level access. The sunroof calibration procedure is a reset that becomes necessary after a battery disconnect or after replacing the sunroof motor. Nissan sunroofs use learned position values to know when the sunroof is fully closed, fully open, or in the tilt position. When those values are lost, the sunroof may not close properly, may stop short of fully opening, or the tilt function may stop working. Some owners have reported leaks that developed because the sunroof did not fully close after a battery disconnect erased the learned positions. Dealerships might charge $80 to $150 for sunroof calibration. The procedure is straightforward. It requires only operating the sunroof controls in a specific sequence while the ignition is on. The automatic climate control reset can solve mysterious heating and air conditioning issues that have nothing to do with mechanical failures. Nissan automatic climate control systems use actuator motors to control blend doors, mode doors, and recirculation doors. These actuators need to know their full range of motion, from fully closed to fully open. When the system loses these learned values, you might experience air coming out the wrong vents, the temperature not matching what you set, or one side of the cabin blowing hot while the other side blows cold in dual-zone systems. Before replacing expensive actuator motors, which cost $150 to $300 each, try a simple reset procedure that can recalibrate the system and restore normal operation. This reset forces each actuator to cycle through its full range of motion, while the control module learns and stores the position values. The intelligent key system reset becomes necessary when your key fob stops being recognized by the vehicle, even though the fob battery is fresh. Nissan intelligent key systems store information about registered key fobs, and sometimes communication errors or electrical glitches can cause the system to temporarily forget a key. Instead of immediately assuming you need a new key fob programmed at the dealership for $200 to $400, a system reset can often restore recognition of your existing key. This is especially common after jump-starting the vehicle, or after the vehicle battery has been completely dead for an extended period. The reason mechanics and dealerships keep these reset procedures quiet comes down to basic economics. Modern vehicles are more reliable than ever, which means less repair work for shops. Dealerships that used to count on consistent revenue from broken parts and worn components now have to find other ways to generate income. Service-based revenue has become increasingly important. Every reset procedure that a customer performs themselves represents lost billable hours for the dealership. A steering angle sensor reset might only take a technician 90 seconds to perform, but dealerships charge for a minimum of 0.3 hours, which translates to about $40 at typical shop rates. Add diagnostic time, shop fees, and other charges, and that 90-second procedure turns into a $150 to $200 invoice. Multiply that by dozens of customers per month, and you understand why service managers are not eager to teach customers these procedures. Many customers believe that complicated problems require complicated, expensive solutions. If someone comes into a dealership with transmission shudder and the service advisor says we can fix this with a 5-minute reset procedure at no charge, the customer might think the dealership is not taking their problem seriously or missing something more significant. But if the advisor says we need to perform advanced diagnostics, run a transmission flush service, and possibly rebuild the transmission, suddenly the customer feels like they are getting thorough professional attention. The expensive solution feels more legitimate even if it is unnecessary. Service advisors know this psychology and sometimes recommend costly procedures even when simple resets would suffice. It is not necessarily malicious. Some advisors genuinely believe that the more expensive solution is better because it involves more work and generates more revenue, which they have been trained to view as inherently more valuable. Another factor is that many newer mechanics and service technicians are not as familiar with these reset procedures as older generations of technicians. Modern automotive training focuses heavily on diagnostic scanning tools, computer systems, and following flowcharts and service manuals. Less emphasis is placed on the old-school knowledge of specific key sequences, pedal procedures, and manufacturer-specific tricks that experienced technicians learned through years of working on the same brand. A young technician who only knows how to diagnose problems through scan tool data might genuinely not know about reset procedures that could solve the issue more simply. When they do not know about a free solution, they recommend the expensive solution they do know about, which is replacing parts until the problem goes away. Some dealerships have policies that discourage performing free services, even when they would solve the problem. Service departments are evaluated on metrics like average repair order value, parts sales, and labor hours sold. A service manager whose department performs lots of free reset procedures will show lower numbers in all these categories, compared to a service manager whose department sells more parts and labor. This creates institutional pressure to avoid free solutions, even when they are appropriate. Technicians who perform too many free fixes might be counseled by their supervisors about the need to generate more billable work. Service advisors who frequently recommend reset procedures instead of paid services might see their commission checks shrink. The system is designed to reward paid solutions and discourage free ones. The complexity myth also plays a role. Many Nissan owners believe that anything involving electronic control modules, sensors, or computer systems requires professional diagnostic equipment and specialized training. This belief is partially true for diagnostics and repairs, but for reset procedures, it is completely false. Reset procedures are intentionally designed to be simple because Nissan engineers knew technicians would need to perform them frequently in the field. They created key and pedal sequences that anyone can follow. Dealerships benefit from maintaining the perception that these procedures are complex and require professional intervention. There is also legitimate concern about liability. When a dealership performs a reset procedure, they take responsibility for doing it correctly and for any consequences if something goes wrong. If a customer performs a reset procedure themselves and makes a mistake, the dealership has no liability. If dealers taught customers how to do resets and a customer then made a mistake and blamed the dealership, that would create potential legal exposure. Some dealerships avoid teaching customers these procedures simply to avoid any possibility of liability claims. It is easier and safer to say this requires professional service and keep the knowledge in-house. The parts sales factor cannot be ignored either. Many reset procedures could eliminate the need for parts replacement. A throttle body relearn might prevent an unnecessary throttle body replacement. A transmission position sensor reset might prevent an unnecessary transmission rebuild. An idle air volume learning procedure might prevent an unnecessary idle air control valve replacement. Dealerships make significant profit margins on parts sales, often marking up parts 50 to 100% over cost. If reset procedures reduce parts sales, they directly impact dealership profitability. This creates a financial incentive to skip the free reset and go straight to parts replacement. Understanding these economic realities helps explain why reset procedures remain obscure knowledge despite being incredibly useful for vehicle owners. It is not usually about mechanics being evil or deliberately trying to rip people off. It is about how the business model of automotive service works. Dealerships need to generate revenue to stay in business, pay their employees, and maintain their facilities. Free services do not contribute to that revenue. Paid services do. The incentive structure naturally pushes toward paid solutions, even when free solutions would work. Individual mechanics might know about reset procedures and even want to share them with customers, but they operate within a system that discourages that sharing. For Nissan owners, learning these reset procedures represents significant potential savings. Over the lifetime of vehicle ownership, you might encounter 3, 4, or 5 different reset procedures. At dealership prices, that could total $500 to $1,500 in charges for services that cost you nothing to perform yourself. Beyond direct cost savings, knowing these procedures gives you power in service interactions. When a service advisor recommends an expensive repair, ask whether a reset procedure might solve the problem first. Even if they were planning to skip that step, once you demonstrate that you know about it, they are more likely to try it. You become a more informed customer who cannot be easily upsold on unnecessary services. These reset procedures also provide diagnostic value. If you are experiencing symptoms and a relevant reset procedure fixes the problem, you know the issue is not mechanical failure, but rather lost learned values. This saves you from unnecessary parts replacement. If you perform a reset procedure and the symptoms persist, then you know there is likely a genuine mechanical or electrical problem that requires further diagnosis. Either way, starting with free reset procedures gives you better information about what is actually wrong with your vehicle before you start spending money on repairs. Many reset procedures should be performed as routine maintenance after certain services. Resetting the throttle position sensor after every throttle body cleaning, resetting the battery management system after every battery replacement, and resetting window positions after every window regulator replacement are simple steps that prevent problems from developing and keep your vehicle running optimally. When you know about these procedures, you can incorporate them into your normal maintenance routine. When you do not know about them, you might inadvertently create new problems while trying to fix old ones. There is an empowerment aspect as well. Modern vehicles can feel intimidating with their complex electronics and computer systems. Many owners feel completely dependent on dealerships and professional mechanics for anything beyond the most basic maintenance. Learning reset procedures shows you that you can interact with your vehicle's electronic systems, solve problems yourself, and take more control over your vehicle ownership experience. It breaks down the mystery and puts more power in your hands as the owner. You begin to understand your vehicle better and feel more confident working on it yourself. The reality is that these reset procedures are not secrets in the sense that Nissan is trying to hide them. They are documented in factory service manuals, technical service bulletins, and training materials that Nissan provides to their dealerships and certified technicians. The procedures are not classified or restricted, but they are not advertised to customers either. Nissan does not include them in owners' manuals. They do not mention them on their website. Dealerships do not volunteer information about them during service visits. The knowledge exists in a gray area where it is technically available but practically obscure unless you know where to look and what to ask for. For the average Nissan owner who just wants their vehicle to work properly, this information might as well be secret because they have no way to discover it through normal ownership channels. Breaking through this information barrier requires either finding someone willing to share the knowledge, such as a friendly technician, an online forum member, or automotive content that explains these procedures, or investing significant time researching factory service information, which most owners are not willing or able to do. The knowledge gap between what technicians know and what customers know represents a business opportunity for service departments. Closing that knowledge gap through education reduces revenue for dealerships but increases value and savings for customers. That fundamental conflict ensures that these procedures will likely remain somewhat obscure despite their tremendous practical value for anyone who owns a Nissan vehicle. Model-specific variations add another layer of complexity to these reset procedures. While the general principles remain consistent across the Nissan lineup, the exact button sequences, timing requirements, and procedural steps can vary significantly between different models and years. A throttle body reset procedure that works perfectly on a 2012 Altima might be slightly different on a 2018 Rogue. The steering angle sensor reset on a Maxima might require different steps than the same reset on a Pathfinder. This variation means that Nissan owners need to find the specific procedure for their exact year, make, and model, rather than assuming a generic procedure will work. Dealership technicians have access to model-specific service information that details these variations, but most owners do not. This creates another barrier to self-service and reinforces dependence on professional service. The transition from older hydraulic and mechanical systems to newer electronic and drive-by-wire systems has made reset procedures both more necessary and more varied. Older Nissans from the 1990s and the early 2000 years had simpler systems that required fewer resets. A mechanical throttle cable did not need position learning because there were no learned positions to store. A hydraulic power steering system did not need angle sensor calibration because there was no electronic sensor involved. As Nissan moved toward electronic throttle control, electric power steering, and computer-controlled transmissions after 2000, the need for reset procedures expanded dramatically. Each new electronic system brought new opportunities for learned values to become corrupted or lost, which meant new reset procedures became necessary. Today's Nissans have more systems that require periodic resets than ever before, yet dealerships have become less forthcoming about explaining these procedures to customers. The introduction of Nissan intelligent mobility technologies in recent years has added even more systems that occasionally require reset or recalibration procedures. ProPilot Assist, which provides semi-autonomous driving capabilities, needs camera calibration after windshield replacement. Intelligent emergency braking systems need radar sensor calibration after front-end collision repairs. Intelligent around view. monitor requires camera alignment after any work affecting camera mounting positions. These advanced driver assistance systems represent the cutting edge of automotive technology, but they also require specialized knowledge to maintain properly. Dealerships position themselves as the only qualified service providers for these systems, often charging premium rates for calibration and reset procedures that are documented and performable by informed owners. Insurance implications also factor into the reset procedure discussion. Some owners worry that performing their own reset procedures might void warranties or create problems with insurance claims if something goes wrong. These concerns are largely unfounded. Reset procedures do not involve modifying the vehicle, replacing parts, or altering factory programming. They simply force control modules to relearn values using procedures that Nissan engineers specifically designed for this purpose. Performing a reset procedure is no different from turning your vehicle on and driving it. The control modules are doing what they were designed to do. However, dealerships sometimes imply that owner-performed procedures could create warranty issues as a way to discourage self-service and maintain their service revenue. In reality, Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act protections mean that manufacturers cannot void warranties simply because an owner performed routine maintenance or reset procedures themselves. The environmental and resource conservation angle deserves mention as well. Unnecessary parts replacement driven by failure to perform simple reset procedures represents significant waste. A throttle body that gets thrown away and replaced when it only needed a reset procedure is wasted aluminum, wasted manufacturing resources, and wasted transportation fuel. A transmission that gets rebuilt or replaced when a position sensor reset would have solved the problem represents enormous material and energy waste. By performing reset procedures when appropriate, Nissan owners not only save money, but also reduce unnecessary consumption of automotive parts. This sustainability benefit rarely gets discussed in service department conversations because it works against the business model of selling parts and labor. But it represents real value in terms of resource conservation and environmental impact. Breaking through this information barrier requires either finding someone willing to share the knowledge, such as a friendly technician, an online forum member, or automotive content that explains these procedures, or investing significant time researching factory service information, which most owners are not willing or able to do. The knowledge gap between what technicians know and what customers know represents a business opportunity for service departments. Closing that gap through education reduces revenue for dealerships, but it increases value and savings for customers. That fundamental conflict means these procedures will likely remain somewhat obscure, despite their tremendous practical value for anyone who owns a Nissan vehicle.